Let's take a big, deep cleansing breath in through our nose. Hold that in the temple just a few moments, and then out through the mouth. Let's do that one more time. Hold it, and then out. One final time. Breathe in all that chi, energy, chaya. Hold that in the temple. Hold it. And then just pure release. Thank you. It's been great spending this time with you today. I've said my piece. So it's great to be here. This all manifested just in the last couple of weeks. We're going to have a little bit of a language lesson, but it's going to be more of a sound lesson. I want to get a couple things out of the way. First is this here. We had this instrument with us. We were here, I think it was July of last year. Was anybody here for that? And then we did, like the next day we did an afternoon workshop, and then we did some sessions here, actually on the stage, that it was amazing, the feedback where people were saying. But at the time, we didn't even have our unit. This is called Paradigm. We had actually the Inventors unit because ours wasn't done before we went out on like a 2-week tour. So you go out having really no knowledge of what to do with it beyond just turning it on and twisting some knobs. Since then, it's become a lot more profound, but I'm actually going to be offering the meditation with some assistance from this in a few moments. What Paradigm does is, put very simply, it's a sonic resonance unit. It makes sounds. It's completely analog. That means there's nothing digital. There's no samples. There's no recordings. There's nothing computerized. It makes pure analog tones. It's like having 3 separate, independent analog toning bowls, like singing bowls, but the difference is that I can tune it as far down to 18 hertz per second, cycles per second, all the way up to 1,000, I believe it is, hertz per second, anywhere in that range. But what we do with the root frequency, I'll introduce you briefly here. Okay, I'm on the throat chakra. So this particular frequency is, there's just one pure tone. Big breath. It's just tones, but it's powerful. You feel that? Now, this particular frequency here is the exact frequency of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. The King's Chamber along the Grand Gallery, and then it's sort of off-center with the, intriguingly, they say 7 pillars, depending on how you count them, above. But if you've ever heard of sacred geometry in architecture, such as great cathedrals, if you go into like St. Patrick's, I remember going into Notre Dame not in France, but in Indiana, and it's amazing when you walk in because the rooms literally sing. Well, this particular frequency is the primary frequency of the King's Chamber. It's also the center frequency of what Eastern science calls the throat chakra. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second tone in. Breathe in a little. Hear that? Now, the closer these two get, the longer that wave will become. That's called the beat frequency. If you know of tingshas, where you hit the 2 bells together, and Eastern yogis will actually use those to entrain. And if you've ever heard of binaural beats or entrainment, holosyncs, hemisync, all these different companies that put 2 different frequencies in each ear, when we do private sessions with this, that's actually what's happening. You're wearing headphones and you're actually, it's almost like it gets the mind out of the way so you can have that pure vibrational experience. So I'll bring this back in a little while. When you see it changing colors, it's actually cycling through the 7 primary chakras of the human body, the center frequency. We'll be doing the meditation with on the heart chakra, which is green because your heart's green, and It's slightly north of F, slightly south of F sharp. But what we're going to do before that, so it's 12:15 to 2 today for the workshop, and then our sessions we're going to be doing here tomorrow. The last time we were here, people were just laying on the stage here, but we have this amazing high-end, sort of hyper-modified massage sound resonance table with lots of, it's really comfortable. And the paradigm is actually vibrating the entire table while you're on it, and you're wearing headphones, which has a different bit of an entrainment quality. So you've all probably had a massage on the outside. This is like getting a sonic alchemy from the inside. And it's more than just the sound, because it's not really about the sound. It's not even about that, the physicality of the movement. It's what happens on the level of the spirit, soul, psyche. It's incredible. We have people who have, actually we have had even events where there's been like 20 people in the room, and all of a sudden the third frequency on this, the higher tone, doesn't matter if you believe it or not, is how they communicate, spirit guides, etc., crossed over loved ones. And what I've been given from those, I'm not one of those woo-woo kind of people. So when I start talking about avatars channeling, it's like, it's a big deal for me, because I'm not, I don't have to consult my guides as to whether I'm going to have chocolate or white chocolate. That's okay. But just looking for lightning bolts. But it's amazing, because it's as if that third frequency has become this communication device that may sound funny, but the way that the messages was given to me was essentially, we've been trying to give this to you, to humanity, for thousands of years, and you constantly made it into religions, and you wrote it down, and you bought it, and you sold it, and you shifted it, and you changed it. So now we're going to give it to you on a level of pure frequency, so you can't misinterpret the message. You can turn it off, you can turn it up, but that's about it, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's exactly what's happening to our culture right now, just on the level of pure frequency. Nice, beautiful sine wave. And then we asked for greater awareness, faster vibration, and all of a sudden the world started getting like this. And now we're like, wait a second, things feel like they're speeding up, things are getting more intense, and it feels like, well, it's exactly what's happening. I do that just as it's going into its rest period, so good timing, Dale. But that's exactly what's happening for us right now. And what happened is this world, what we call the world, this dream, this projection that's on a screen that we call our life, when we aren't what's projecting on the screen, we're not any of this. We're what's watching. But when what we have manifest and that which is eternal, which sees, go out of phase with each other, it's like a car out of alignment. Bump, 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 bump. And that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. Everything just kind of like, sort of when you're going down that fast part of the roller coaster and you go into the hairpin turn, you want to make sure that it feels like those wheels are staying on the track, as opposed to right now, excuse me for quoting Ozzy Osbourne on a Sunday morning, but we're going off the rails in a crazy train. It's kind of how it feels. And it doesn't matter about what you think. It's not about an orange-headed monster in a big white house. There's nothing outside of you that's created this. It's about how you feel inside. You've never had a thought that was anything but a delusion of a mind that's not there in the first place. It's not about that. It's not about shifting the computer in your head. It's about bringing ourselves back to that awareness which sees. It's about the space between the words, the space between the thoughts. And that's why toning has become such an important and amazing thing for me. Of course, with Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic, you can kind of tone in Greek too. You can tone in Latin, Sanskrit, of course. Tiwa, Pueblo, Navajo, Lakota. Tiwa is an amazing language. That's down around New Mexico area. One of my teachers, a guy named Beautiful Painted Arrow. In Tiwa, his language, it sounds like this. Tslutkoy. What? Tslutkoy. And the tslut in Tiwa is the arrow being projected. And the t is it hitting the target, and koi is the vibration of it resonating across the target that it just hit. Beautiful Painted Arrow. His name is Joseph Rael, which is a powerful name in lots of different languages, Rael. But in Tiwa, they didn't actually write the language down. They didn't write it down. They still haven't written it down, because they knew that writing it down would allow a loss of recall. And you would no longer have that experience with the evolution of pure vibration. You'd now be having a relationship with words on a page. Think about that. It's funny how most people here in the West don't even know that many of these Eastern languages didn't start as languages in the way that we would think. There was actually pure toned sounds and pictures that went with it. And have everybody's seen hieroglyphs, etc. So I want to start by just the first letter in Aramaic. It sounds like this. The word's aleph. It's the same essentially in Hebrew, and it sounds like this. Can you make that sound? Let's do that again, one more time, really wide open. It's funny because you can translate Aramaic by words or by letters. This is what the original letter for Aleph in what's called Proto-Semitic looked like. What does that look like? The first letter in the alphabet meant cow. Isn't that awesome? Everybody's like, there's a point here, right? No, actually, it didn't mean cow. It's even funnier than that. It meant bull. I am originally from New Jersey. Technically, it meant ox. It was kind of like a circle with horns on it. Ox. Why ox? Why would be ox? That's kind of odd. Here's the funny thing about an ox. An ox is an animal that was and still is prized for its tremendous strength. But it doesn't gain its strength just from strong shoulders or haunches or knees or legs. The reason the ox is so powerful is because it was recognized even to this day as using its entire body holistically in a state of wholeness. So the revelation there is that true power exists only in full wholeness. So what the ah sound represented, the aleph, the bull, was the representation of everything, of the all, of the whole, of the one. And it has another sound besides, it also sounds like this, okay? Listen closely. Silence. It's recognized by the sound of ah and. Now, when it's at the beginning of a word, it tends to have a sound ah. There's so many different Aramaic words that I can use, Allah, the word for God. However, if it's in the middle of a word, we're going to get to a word berashit, where it doesn't actually sound, it's actually silent. Berashit. It's not berashit. It's berashit. There's almost like a repose. There's silence. There's this stillness in the center of a word. Do you understand what I'm saying? Excuse me, that's pretty powerful. So the second letter in the alphabet looks like this. What does that look like? Drum. Musicians. So this is the letter bet or bait. And actually that's where alphabet comes from, alphabet. What this word actually means is house. There's some languages where it looks more like that, some languages where it looks more like that. This is kind of representative of the way houses were several thousand years ago. They were caves. Funny, like as an example, look at the Jesus story. There's so many things people look at in the Jesus story, especially around Christmas, that aren't there. Jesus was born in he was laid in a manger, born in a stable. Is there anybody that's ever seen in the four Gospels the word stable, that he was born in a stable? It's not there. Anybody know where that comes from? It comes from St. Francis of Assisi in the year 1223, who made the first Italian context manger scene, nativity scene, and he did it in a context that the local Italian countryside children would understand. It doesn't say anything about a stable in the Bible until after the four Gospels and people were reinterpreting. What he most likely would have been born in is a cave. He had to be born in a stable because there's no room in Aramaic and in Greek, that word meant the main dwelling area of the house. And the main dwelling area was higher, and where the animals were kept was lower, which is where he would have been born. You put the animals lower, why? Because of body heat. But of course, with body heat comes body gases and things like that. So I'm sure it wasn't the most pleasant family atmosphere at dinner time, I would say, occasionally midwinter. But what I am saying is, so we misinterpret things, so sort of like Plato's cave. So what the bait sound represents, it means essentially house. It's the differentiation between inside and outside, between the what quantum science would call the implicate and the explicate order. And actually, as a matter of fact, and I'll come back to this in the Gospel of Thomas. Thomas was written by not Thomas. The first thing they'll tell you in seminary is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not written by Matthew or Mark or Luke or John. Thomas is an Aramaic word, tumas, that means twin, which actually means mirror image or reflection. What it means is you're used to this exoteric physical Jesus. Now we're going to give you a deeper soul, spirit level reflection of that can be lived rather than stared at as some sort of thing outside of you. That's what Thomas represents. But the disciples say to Yeshua, they were like, can you tell us how our end will come? And then it says chuckles. It doesn't say chuckles, but I thought it would have said chuckles because he probably laughed and said, his response was, oh, have you actually found the beginning that now you're looking for the end? Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning, for they will know the end and they will not taste death. I'll come back to that in a moment. But that b. So we go kind of from a oneness to a two-ness, duality. But it's not really two, it's still one. Is there anybody that can find a place where it changes from light to dark? There's no line, it doesn't exist. I love when you're like trying to do a custom color on a computer and you can see all the colors not in lines, but on this gradation. And you see that there's no separation between all these different colors. They actually run right into each other. And it's only when it's in a particular area, they're like, oh, okay, that's blue. Wait, it's sort of violet now. Do you understand what I'm saying? We put these artificial lines where they aren't. So when you make that sound, oh, and then it's kind of like blowing a kiss with a bee. Let's say you've got a mouthful of smoke. What would happen? Oh, a little bit of a smoke ring, kind of like the manifestation of everything, the flow patterns of universes. Interesting. Let's try that. Just I can get you all to do anything. It's going to get even better. So that ab sound is the word father in Aramaic. Ab. What was Abraham's name originally in the Bible? Who actually knows their Bible? Abram. Technically, that's our Western mispronunciation. His original name was Ab-Ram, Father Ram, which is Kashmiri. It's not Hebrew. Abram. And it became Abraham, which means father of love. Raham, Rahim, Rahma is the primary word for a love that quakes from the center of your being. There's so much more depth if you break it down to what things were before you threw all these mental concepts on top. So let's experiment with another letter. This one looks kind of like this. A wiggly worm. We were driving down the highway yesterday. I'm sorry. A highway, and like people are doing 60 miles an hour, and my beautiful Magdalene Loretta flipped out because you hit a caterpillar. And I'm like, how did you see a caterpillar at 65 miles an hour on a highway? Anyway, and she was crying about it for 10 minutes. She wasn't crying for 10 minutes, but it was 9 minutes at least. But so what does that look like? Mountains. So this letter is called mem, and it sounds like this. Okay? I will say, and this is quite profound, that my mother passed just over 12 years ago, and the final sound that she was able to make in her life was she just toned. I got up in bed with her in the nursing home, held her in my arms, and we toned for basically the last 20 hours of her life. Funny that if you put an aleph there, you have or Ma. Ma is the sound most often uttered by a child in relation to what it considers to be the maternal figure in its life, whether it's in that language or not. Even if ma is not a word in the language, children tend to look at the mother and go, ma. There's even evidence of monkeys and some birds that do that. That's a pretty eternal sound. So what happens if you try that? Let's try the then open again. Mom. What are you saying? You're saying mom. Coincidence? Not really, because it's been in these languages for thousands of years. Mom. So amma or amam is the word in Aramaic for mother. Amma. So let's go back to that Abba. Abba or Ab is the word for father in Aramaic. So let's try Abba and keep repeating that sound, okay? Bob. What are we saying? We're saying Bob. So Bob is the name of God. Bob is the name of the great father. Sorry, Bob Sima offered me $50 to put that into the talk today. So, actually, he doesn't know. I just said that. I'll just say, hey, you might want to listen to that talk. So let's look at another word here, and we're actually going to start bringing this toward this really beautiful but exciting resolution here. He's somewhere going, I think it's funny, we left North Carolina to come to Annapolis, and Bob and Shannon left Annapolis to go to North Carolina this weekend, so it's kind of the way it works. So what's that first word in the beginning of the Bible, the beginning of Genesis? In the beginning. So that word in Aramaic sounds like this. Berashit. Okay? That's actually the word Genesis. You're not going to see this because the letters are a bit small. But I'll show it to you. This is on that Proto-Sinaitic pictograms. You're not going to see it. Which side am I looking at here? Wow, Dale, you really made this. Oh, okay, I thought it was out of order. Beit Resh Aleph Shin Yod Ta. So let me look at that bigger. So the first letter is actually that Beit. What did that mean? Do you remember? House. Another way of expressing that is break open, burst open, inside, outside. Remember, it's that sort of differentiation of a duality of something. Technically, the first letter of the Torah in Hebrew is not the Beit. It's not the first letter that's written. Technically, the first letter of the text is Aleph. But it's not on the page because it's silent. Now, I know that's a deep thought here. First letter is Beit, bursting open, breaking open from the, this is the second letter, from the dinosaur. From the, this word is Resh. This means head. Bursting open at the head. Let me ask you a question. If you're at the head of the line, where are you? Beginning, right? Now, when I ask that of people in the West, people always say the beginning. However, when I ask that of people in the other hemisphere, they tend to say, well, if you're at the head of the line, you're at the beginning or the end. You're at the beginning or the end. Remember what Yeshua said? Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning, at the head, for they will know the head, the leading edge, the end, and they will not taste death. Breathe for a second. I can see that popping for a lot of people in the room. Some are going, I have no clue what he just said, and others are going. Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning at the head, for they will know the end, the head, the leading edge, and they will not taste death. Can you think of a universe that has no end? It's not possible. Your brain can't do it. You can have a direct experience of it in meditation, deep prayer. Your brain can think of a universe that's always growing, but not one with no boundary. It can only happen experientially, because this is a binary system. It's like ones and zeros. It's a computer. Okay? So breaking open from the head and the leading edge of everything, of the all, to, what does that look like? Now let's not, I know I was talking about mothers. Let's not go in that direction on a Sunday morning. It's funny because actually most of the time this letter looked more like a line with teeth underneath it. Why did I snort like a pig? That was an interesting, trying to get you off the subject of, obviously it was my head in the subject, but that sounds even worse. Okay, moving on. What that word is shin. What that shine, sheen, or express. It was represented as teeth, essentially. Shine, sheen, express. That's what the word shin represents. Where are we at here? What does that look like? Chicken Foot. Chicken Foot's a great band with Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony. No, Chicken Foot. That actually means hand. The letter is yod. Now, in the Gospel of John, Beada is the word. When it says that nothing existed but through his hands, that doesn't mean God's got a neat little workshop up there in the clouds and he's building things. What that means is that everything that you see is God. That means that there's not one light, but rather every single light that you see is the one light, refracted, manifest, sent into all these apparently different directions. The word angel, angelos in Greek, is the same word as angle, because we are the light of eternity projected into this manifest, whatever we call it, dimension, and projected, and it looks like billions of people on earth, but there's one, really. The final letter there in the beginning looks like this. Looks like a cross. It means sign, mirror, or reflection. So let's just look at, this is just the first word of the Torah, and before I say this, I'll say that it was almost 900 years before the original Torah was looked at as storylines. It was originally a string of characters like a mathematical algorithm, and they didn't say the words, they toned each letter independently. And the key was to be conscious of each of the letters that you were toning and signing, while simultaneously being aware of the wholeness, the fullness of the text. So you're wholly, fully present in this moment while also aware of that oneness. And then after about 900 years, they started putting spaces between words. They started grouping different groups of letters together, and it turned in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. How many people actually know that? Not a lot of people know that. So just that first word is bursting open, breaking open, inside, outside, from the center source leading edge of itself to shine, sheen, and express and reach out to become its own reflection, sign, or mirror image. And that's just the first word of the Torah. One word. So let's try making that. How did it sound? It sounds like this. I'm going to let you just listen. Bereshit. You want to remember the t at the end, because I know this is weird, but the way that my mentors taught me was that it's like contiguous phlegm and that it kind of breaks off. I'm sorry, that's the way it was taught to me, and it kind of works. So you got to remember the t, because all of a sudden now it looks separate. It looks like there's God plus the world. But yet God was the mountain, and all of a sudden you're looking at a mountain, then you take a rock away and you say, oh, here's a rock, that's a mountain. But the rock is the mountain. The space between is also God. So let's try Bereshit and see how it feels just one time, okay? Bereshit. Let's do that 2 more times. Beautiful breath in. Bereshit. One more, wide open. Really let this ring out, okay? Bereshit. A little bit of a rhetorical question. You don't have to raise your hands or say yes or no. Does anybody feel anything just from making that sound? So what we're going to do this afternoon is we're going to do a lot of intensive Aramaic toning, Hebrew. We're going to be doing some Egyptian toning, threading in some of the insights from what was there from Magdalita, which is really powerful. It has a lot to do with the 7 chakras, though people don't know that unless they've studied it. But really the essence of what I wanted to get across to you today is it's not really about the words, it's not about the letters on the page. It's about how you feel. It's about the essence of the realization that your life is literally a prayer. Your life is a literal, vibrating, multi-sensory, deep resonance, multi-harmonic tone poem at all times. You don't raise your vibration of one frequency, you expand your bandwidth. There's a big difference between the two of those. You don't go from 30 cycles a second to 30 and a half to 31, but rather you open up your awareness of the oneness. And that love is those moments when you're firing on all cylinders and you have that sensory perception of that one that's far beyond anything this can comprehend. And all you want to do is birth that out. So I want to leave you with a quote here. This is from my book, Echoes of an Ancient Dream, Aramaic Toning on the Path of Light. I think we have a few copies on the table. It's all about toning. It's very simply written. And the end actually takes you through the pictogram words, and you can tone words like what Lord really was in Aramaic, which we'll do this afternoon, which people usually grab their mouth and start crying when they hear what the word Lord actually was. Words like Amen, which comes at the end of prayers. So I just wanted to leave you with this quote from my book. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Wrong book. Last night I was reading Poe to I'm reading Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart, to my wife. It was a romantic moment. And the whole time I'm going, oh my God, he's so brilliant, but he scares the crap out of me, but it's awesome. So this is from Dr. John Waterhouse, a mentor, friend, beautiful being, friend of mine. He used to be the president of Centers for Spiritual Living worldwide for several years. He says, God is not an observer in our lives. God is the consciousness, the awareness of our lives. As we begin to more fully comprehend the constant and abiding presence of divine spirit, we will find ourselves entertaining the notion that our every utterance, our every thought, and absolutely everything we express into life is a calling out to God. Think about that. Try when you're in traffic just going, oh, and try to, instead of trying to shift your thoughts to not want to poke the eyes out of the guy in front of you or give him the special sacred hand signals. They're a little different in New Jersey than they are in the southern states, but actually just make a simple tone. Under your breath if you need to. You can say lots of things under your breath, but try, You're exemplifying the oneness just by that, or by your silence. Every time we curse, we are praying. Every time we are angry, we are praying. Every time someone tells a joke or laughs or lies or cries, what is happening is prayer. Our judgments are prayers. Our fears and phobias are prayers. Spirit is present in the midst of it all. Everything we think, say, and do is a prayer, and every bit of it is having a direct and significant effect on our lives, because we literally are walking prayers. You can let go of the obsession of trying to shift your thoughts. Bring yourself back to how you feel. Pay attention to that. Be curious. Allow what I call the cosmic question mark. Go into a situation open, not closed off, thinking you need to protect yourself from something. If you're in a oneness, what are you protecting yourself from? You. If you take care of what's inside, you won't attract those crazy situations into your life so much. But be aware, be curious, be open. You literally are a conscious living prayer. And if there's anything you forget, everything else I said today about oxes and bulls and stuff, just remember that and remember this. I'll see you in a few moments for the meditation. Thank you very much for being open.